One of the most common things that we repeatedly experience in FROMLAND is the visions. It's clear that these visions keep happening and will keep happening, but Jade's visions in particular are something I really want to talk about because they will be really important to the overall story of FROMLAND. In fact, I'm even willing to say that based on what we've seen so far, we already have enough to know the truth about FROMLAND. The first vision Jade ever experiences was way back when he first went into the cellar. This happened like a day after he got to FROMLAND. At this time, Jade was still thinking that all of this was an elaborate game set up by Toby. And Toby was the same guy who was driving the car that got Jade into FROMLAND. When Jade goes into the cellar, he sees a very creepy looking guy who is smashed by a boulder. And then he falls down because of fear, and I look at the guy, can you blame him? It's creepy as hell. But when he looks up, he ends up seeing the symbol. This vision is unique for so many different reasons, like it's the first time we saw the symbol, and of course you can also ask, where the hell did that boulder come from? And of course this guy or monster thing is unlike anything we've ever seen before in the show. Even at this point in the story, we don't actually know what this guy is. He has white eyes like people infected by the cicadas and the Civil War soldier, but he also has blood dripping down his eyes, and that's something we've never seen before in a character or a monster at any time in the entire series. When I first saw this guy, I thought there was going to be some sort of plague going around in FROMLAND, but currently this guy just seems like he's a unique monster that we haven't been introduced to just yet. But I guess the blood from his eyes could simply be from him getting smashed by the boulder. The next one was when him and Jim were trying to find a tree that they could use as a radio tower in the woods. Jim decided to climb up the tree, and in that split second everything went to hell for Jade. Like, he literally looked like he was in hell. Blood dripping from the trees onto his body, and the branches were littered with corpses. The sight he saw at that moment was definitely very traumatic, but this wasn't even the worst of it, because very soon after that a Civil War soldier showed up and tried to shoot him. He ended up getting chased by the guy and getting shot at until he got woken up by Jim. And this one is very interesting because it's the first real indicator we ever get that FROMLAND is much older than you might first assume when you start watching the series. With the Civil War soldier, it really started making me wonder how long the cycle happening in FROMLAND has been going on for. And with Martin's introduction in the second season, this scene with Jade and the Civil War soldier became way more relevant to understand everything that's going on in FROMLAND. The soldier himself looked like the guy in the cellar because both of them had white eyes, or I guess in the soldier's case it's simply one white eye. Is that relevant? Maybe or maybe not. But both of these visions followed a very subtle pattern that you may not have realized just yet, and that is both of them happened when Jade was looking for answers. At the cellar, he wanted to know about what he thought was Toby's game, and at the tree, he and Jim were trying to find a signal for the radio. It's almost as if the trigger for Jade receiving these visions is him actively looking for answers. It makes you wonder, is he getting these visions because he himself is special, or because the person or entity sending them to him is actually doing it because he sees Jade making an effort to find the truth? And this brings us to by far the craziest vision Jade has ever had so far in the entire series, and that was when he saw the children in white in the underground tunnels. This scene was beyond monumental in every way because it's one of the biggest reveals in the entire show. We finally had another character besides Victor and Tabitha going to the underground tunnels. We found out so many different things simply because Jade chose to come here. The location of the children, how many children there were, and of course we found out about the meaning of the symbol that Jade kept seeing repeatedly in his visions. And this was such a big revelation because for 2 seasons we'd been asking about what the symbol could actually represent, and this episode finally showed us what that was. The symbol was the children in white looking up at the tree roots, and that is what Jade kept seeing the entire entirety of what this actually means is obviously going to be more relevant in the future episodes and future season. But before this happens, before Jade gets to see all of these revelations, the children or the symbol, something very unique happened. He got into a conversation with Tom, the bartender. And this was so crazy when it happened because Tom died many episodes before this scene ever took place. So what was actually going on here? To me, it's obvious that this was not a hallucination or some sort of delusion, but an entity trying to give answers to Jade and therefore the townspeople as well. This entity is really unique because unlike the other one, which punishes the townspeople for trying to look for answers, this one clearly encourages Jade to find them. He sent him into the tunnels, and it's because of this entity that we finally learned the meaning of the symbol that Jade kept seeing, along with us learning where the children were, as well as the lighthouse trap set by the boy in white. Because of course the children weren't anywhere near the lighthouse, which is where he manipulated Tabitha into going under the guise of saving the children. The boy in white, that is. It's interesting to remember this scene because we learned two things when Tabitha went to the lighthouse. We learned that the boy in white is not afraid to deceive others, and we learned that he can use the children's voices to manipulate people. We also know that he can communicate telepathically because he did that to Sarah at the end of season 1. Because of all of this, it's possible that whatever entity was talking to Jade can also do those same exact things. Basically, I'm saying this entity was taking Tom's form because he knew Jade would respond positively to it. Of course, because Jade and Tom had a special relationship. I actually think this entity and the boy in white are working together. It may not be a coincidence that Jade only saw all of this after the cicadas had infected 3 people, and that only happened because the boy in white sent Boyd into the dungeon. But something else that's really important to understanding FROMLAND is Sarah. Sarah, just like Jade, has a very deep connection with this place in a way that no other character has ever really shown, and we've known that ever since the first season. The voices in FROMLAND have a very strange fascination with her, and they never seem to talk to anyone else except her in particular. The only other person we know they've talked to was Father Katri, because he described being brought to FROMLAND by a voice he assumed was God. Obviously that wasn't the case, but okay. And Sarah doesn't seem to have these crazy experiences like Jade does, but there is someone who does have something very similar to that, and that is Tabitha. Tabitha had a very unique vision at the end of season 1. She saw herself climbing up the lighthouse, and not only that, but she also heard the horn blowing. But from the bottle tree, this was the only time where I've ever seen the dates or the numbers or whatever they are at any other point in the series. This scene ended up happening at the end of season 2. The dates weren't there, and we don't really know where the horn is coming from. Boyd and Sarah also heard it, so it presumably comes from the lighthouse, but to be honest, I personally haven't been convinced that's where it's coming from. If it is coming from the lighthouse, then maybe it represents when someone new enters FROMLAND. In Tabitha's vision, she also sees when Jade's car crashed into their RV, so could be the horn blows or is blown whenever a new group of people is summoned into the town. Tabitha and Jade are really the only people so far we've seen having these super intense visions. Everything else just seems kinda minor. It's worth pointing out that Tabitha only starts getting her visions after she started digging the hole in the basement, trying to understand where the electricity is coming from. So just like Jade, it's almost like that desire to know the truth might be part of why they're being sent these visions. Something really interesting that I've noticed about these visions is when you start looking at all of them together, Jade's visions in particular seem to be very focused on showing the past, and Tabitha's visions might just be focusing on showing the future. And understanding this is very important to knowing the meaning of FROMLAND. And I want to point out that in the second season, when Tabitha has the visions of the kids, they are clearly very serious, and it's obvious that they are trying to pass her a message. But when Jade sees them, you can see that the kids are clearly very excited and joyful about what's about to happen as they sing Ankui, Ankui over and over, which, by the way, I think that Ankui means it's coming, it's coming. It's either referring to a specific day or the jellyfish itself. When Jade saw them, the kids were being sacrificed to this entity, which is why they were so happy. They thought that it would be a good thing. But when Tabitha sees them, which is far off into the future, maybe what she's seeing hasn't even happened yet. But at this point, they've realized that it was a mistake. Probably because they've become imprisoned by this demon for a millennia or centuries or however long FROMLAND has been around, which, looking by their faces, obviously was not the plan. Ethan also says once in the series that maybe they have to save somebody if they want to leave. And it's probably the kids or the boy in white and his entity buddies. And, you know, it could even be that the kids are the boy in white's entity buddies. Who knows?
I think it's probably a quest. We probably have to save somebody if we want to go home.
Ethan also said that there could be somebody trying to help them, and obviously the Tom entity is one of those people. But getting back to it, the Civil War vision in particular was very interesting because it seemed like Jade wasn't merely observing the situation. It was almost like he was seeing the encounter through someone else's eyes, someone who ended up getting killed by the soldier. It makes you wonder if the reason he got pulled out of the vision wasn't because of Jim trying to wake him up, but actually because the person whose mind he was in actually ended up getting killed, forcing Jade to snap back to reality. So I wonder if some of these visions are him observing it through someone else's eyes each time rather than his own. It also might be why Tabitha didn't see the numbers in the lighthouse when she actually went there, because maybe you need someone with a similar ability to what Sarah has. It's obvious that she has an incredibly strong connection to FROMLAND like no one else does. That scene with her at the ruins was incredible and definitely one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. She could hear the music box, but neither Boyd nor Kenny could do the same. She's also the only person so far who has been able to hear the voices speaking to her. Nobody else can do that. That makes me wonder if her role in the game is to be the ears or something like that. It would be very awesome if someone else gets to the lighthouse that can see the numbers or years when Tabitha didn't. It would also mean that the numbers are in fact there, but they just exist in a separate plane of existence, i.e. the same plane where the dungeon is, the same dimension where the music box exists. Or used to exist. I've said this show suffers a lot from not having a single individual who can explain the lore, which is why Martin's death before he revealed any meaningful information like how to kill the monsters or how to get out was such a strong blow. But imagine if Morgan died before he told Rick about the walkers or how to kill them. Like, it would have made the entire story so much longer than it needed to be. And that's what happened when Martin got killed. We lost pretty much the only person who could have told us about the lore. Assuming he was a real person, of course. I've started considering that not having someone who can directly explain things might have been an intentional idea by the writers, because it seems that they may want to reveal the story through these visions and supernatural experiences, like Sarah's ability seems focused on the other side, the alternate dimension. Her feeling the music box was absolutely insane, and it seems like she must have been feeling something very powerful when she was at the bottle tree. Whereas Jade's focus is mostly on the past, showing the things that already happened, showing how everything came to be. We already know the entire story. It's just hiding behind what he's been seeing. That's all we need. It's a puzzle, and all we need to do is to put the pieces in the right order and everything is going to make sense. And I think those pieces, at least for understanding FROMLAND's past, I think that secret is hidden in the visions that Jade has been seeing. Once we put those puzzle pieces together, we'll have the entire story of FROMLAND right then and there. That's why Jade is the key to understanding FROMLAND. That's why he's the key to knowing the story.